My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health. Last week, the government, indeed Australia, celebrated Medicare's 40th birthday. To commemorate this, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "My government is delivering on its commitment to strengthen Medicare and make it easier and cheaper to get quality health care." The Health Minister said, and I quote, "It was a Labor government that built Medicare and is only a Labor government who will continue to protect and strengthen Medicare." End quote. Yet on the ground, I am hearing and seeing from an increasing number of Tasmanians that they are finding it more difficult to see a doctor. We have the lowest bulk billing take-up in the nation, and wait times to see specialists are way longer than they have ever been. So, Minister, what is your government doing and your Labor senators from Tasmania doing to encourage more doctors to take up bulk billing in Tasmania?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Lambie for the question, and it's a really important question of how we can continue to strengthen Medicare, and particularly in states where there has been historically issues around bulk billing. We have the same issues here in the ACT around bulk billing as Tasmania, and GP shortages and shortages for specialists as well. It is something that small jurisdictions have always struggled with, because the bigger professions or the larger number of medical professionals tend to move to some of the bigger cities. But I think when you look back in the last 18 months of what we've tried to do, and yes, the health system is massive and it takes time for investments to often show results, but what we've seen with the urgent care clinics and what we've seen with the bulk billing rates across the nation in just the few months since we provided that tripling of the incentive for bulk billing rates is showing good results. They are early results, but they are good results. I think the GP bulk billing rate has risen by 2.1 percentage points in the first 2 months since that tripling of the bulk billing incentive was introduced through the budget. I know the Minister for Health has been working with the Premier in Tasmania around models of care that work for Tasmania, including, I think, partnerships between the hospitals and primary health care, acknowledging some of the particular issues that Tasmania has. I know that the urgent care clinics are up and running and are being incredibly popular, but there is more to be done. We've got to encourage more people into general practice. We've got to look at incentives to support that, and the Health Minister is doing all of those things. But we inherited a system that was failing. Bulk billing rates were declining. GPs were under enormous pressure, and we have made the investments that you never did to fix it.
In Tasmania, especially in regional areas like the northwest, we have the oldest, sickest and poorest Australians. I'm hearing from GPs, specialists and allied health professionals that it is getting harder and harder to service regional areas. Wait times for their patients are increasing. Goodness me, in Burnie itself, it is 6 months to get a podiatry appointment for anyone. Minister, how do you reconcile longer wait times and reduced access to health services with, and I quote, continuing to protect and strengthen Medicare?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I think I've answered some of that in the first question, and I would say that the government's responsibility around Medicare is to strengthen it and to provide those investments in it. In bulk billing, where I said the national average was a 2.1% increase across Australia, in Tasmania in 2 months, the incentive has increased bulk billing by 5.7%. That means Tasmanians have saved $990,000 between November and December on the bulk billing incentive. Tasmanians have saved more than $5 million on cheaper medicines. They have saved money on the 60-day prescribing, where we know that there are a lot of people who are eligible for that. We've got the urgent care clinics, where we've had over 13,500 presentations to those areas. And we've got the GP grants going out, where Tasmanians have got $3.46 million in those dollars worth of those grants. But there is more to be done, Senator Lambie, because we want everyone to have access to affordable health care in this country.
Thank you, Madam President. Part of the 40-year birthday, Medicare is releasing and I quote, special edition Medicare card in 2024 to commemorate the 40th anniversary of Australia's world-class universal health insurance scheme, end quote. I'm just wondering, how much is that costing the taxpayer for a brand new shiny little car when we've already got one?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I'll see if there's any further information I can provide on that. My understanding is they are going to be issued to people whose cards expire this year. So it's for people whose cards were going to expire. It won't be a reissuing for everybody. And people who have a digital card, so who have it on their MyGov app or through the Medicare app, will also see it reflected on that electronic Medicare card, but my understanding it's only to be provided to those who have a card that expires this year.
Thank you, Minister.
So, last year the Australian Health Minister announced, and I quote, the biggest investment into bulk billing in the history of Medicare, end quote. At the time, the Minister said the Labor government had tripled incentives for GPs to bulk bill. What he didn't say is that you only get bulk bill if you're a pension or a child with a concession. According to an investigation in today's Tasmania's Examiner newspaper, some medical clinics are asking new patients to pay full fees. And one practice in Launceston is apparently begging people to pay for the surgery directly, stating on its website, and I quote, "We receive no government funding at all," end quote. Tasmania has the lowest rate of bulk billing in Australia, despite the fact that Tasmanians are the sickest and most poorly paid people in the country. The government and the minister have been patting themselves on the back as the figures for the first 2 months of the policies have come in, and there has been 2.1% increase. That's great. But what happens if you're not a pensioner or a child? Then you can't get bulk billing, it seems, in Tasmania. I have a very dear old school friend who has battled for years with mental illness. She's on disability support pension. She called me last week. She was absolutely beside herself because she can't get bulk bill. She couldn't afford to see her GP because she couldn't afford the gap, and that means that she couldn't get the critical prescription filled that she needed. I gave her the money, that's not a problem. But how many other Tasmanians still can't afford to go to the doctor? Too many. How many can't afford to get that vital prescription? Too many. How many are putting off or ignoring dealing with nagging pain? Too many. Australia prides itself on a fair go attitude. But if you are a retired Australian or a low-income family in a rural regional area, there doesn't seem to be a fair go for you when it comes to healthcare. In fact, the best indication of your health is your postcode. Rich people live longer because they can afford to pay. According to the government's website, and I quote, Medicare is Australia's universal health insurance scheme. It guarantees all Australians access to a wide range of health and hospital services at a low or no cost, end quote. But that's not quite true, is it really? Because not everyone can afford to pay. Maybe the Medicare website should change their front page to reflect the reality of our healthcare system. I reckon it should say something like, if you want to be healthy, you had better be wealthy, because that's exactly where this country is at.